The vast emptiness of space stretched out before the Galactic Confederation's Grand Meeting Hall. Hundreds of alien races from across the Milky Way gathered here, each with their own unique features and customs. Some had tentacles, others had multiple eyes, and a few even floated in the air. But among this diverse group, one species stood out: the humans. Jake Thompson, Earth's ambassador, sat quietly in his chair. He felt small and out of place among the colorful array of aliens. The other races towered over him, their voices booming as they discussed important matters. Jake couldn't help but notice the sideways glances and whispers directed at him. "Look at the human," a tall, blue-skinned alien muttered to his neighbor. "I heard they run from danger at the first sign of trouble." His friend, a creature with 4 arms and glowing eyes, nodded in agreement. "Yes, it's a wonder they even made it to space. Such a cowardly species." Jake's cheeks burned with embarrassment, but he said nothing. He was used to this treatment by now. Humans had only joined the Galactic Confederation 50 years ago, and they were still seen as the new kids on the block. Their reputation as a cowardly species had spread quickly, much to Earth's dismay. The meeting began, and the leader of the Confederation, a wise and ancient being named Zorth, called for attention. His voice echoed through the hall, silencing all chatter. "Esteemed members of the Galactic Confederation," Zorth began, his 3 eyes blinking slowly, "we face a grave threat. Our long-range sensors have detected a new and dangerous enemy approaching our borders." A hush fell over the crowd. Jake leaned forward, his heart racing. This was big news. Zorth continued, his voice grave. "We know little about them, but what we do know is troubling. They call themselves the Ravagers, and they live up to their name. They have destroyed every civilization they've encountered, leaving nothing but ruins in their wake." Holographic images appeared in the center of the hall, showing scenes of destruction. Planets lay in ruins, entire cities reduced to ash. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "The Ravagers have technology we've never seen before," Zorth explained. "Their weapons can pierce our strongest shields. Their ships move faster than we thought possible. And their soldiers—" He paused, his voice faltering. "Their soldiers feel no fear, no pain. They fight until the very end." Panic spread through the hall. Aliens of all shapes and sizes began talking at once, their voices rising in fear and anger. "What can we do? How can we fight such an enemy? We're doomed." Zorth raised his hands, calling for calm. "We must stand united," he said firmly. "Every race must contribute to our defense. We need new weapons, new strategies. We need bravery in the face of this terrible foe." As the other races began discussing battle plans, Jake noticed something strange. Many of the alien representatives were looking at him, not with disdain or pity as usual, but with hope. A reptilian alien named Sular slithered up to Jake. "Human," he hissed softly. "Your kind. You have experience with war, yes?" Jake nodded slowly. "We do," he admitted, "though it's not something we're proud of." Sular's forked tongue flicked out nervously. "But you've faced overwhelming odds before, fought enemies that seemed unbeatable." "Many times throughout our history," Jake said, wondering where this was going. More aliens gathered around, listening intently. A floating jellyfish-like creature spoke up. "And you've developed many different weapons, tactics for various situations." Jake nodded again, feeling increasingly confused. "Yes, but I thought you all considered us cowards. Why the sudden interest in our military history?" An elder alien with wrinkled green skin and wise eyes stepped forward. "Young human," he said gently, "what you call cowardice, we're starting to see as caution. And caution born from facing many dangers. Well, that might be exactly what we need right now." Jake's eyes widened as he realized what was happening. The Galactic Confederation, in its fear of the Ravagers, was turning to humanity for help. The very traits that had made them look down on humans, their caution, their experience with conflict, their diverse approach to problem-solving, were now seen as valuable. As the aliens continued to pepper him with questions about Earth's military strategies and weapons, Jake felt a mix of pride and apprehension. Humanity was about to step onto a much bigger stage, ready to prove that they were anything but cowards. The age of human leadership in the Galactic Confederation was about to begin, whether they were ready for it or not. The news of the Ravagers' approach spread quickly through the Galactic Confederation. Panic gripped many worlds as reports of the first attacks reached the central planets. Jake Thompson, the human ambassador, found himself thrust into the center of the crisis. "Ambassador Thompson, we need your expertise," Zorth said, his three eyes blinking rapidly. The Confederation leader looked tired, the weight of responsibility clear on his alien features. Jake nodded, still amazed at how quickly things had changed. Just days ago, humans were seen as the cowards of the galaxy. Now, everyone looked to them for guidance. "What can we do to help?" Jake asked, his voice steady despite his nerves. Zorth gestured to a large holographic display. It showed a star system near the edge of Confederation space. Red dots blinked ominously, representing Ravager ships. "They've already taken 3 planets in the Zeta sector," Zorth explained. "Our forces are overwhelmed. We need new strategies, new ways of thinking." Jake studied the display, his mind racing. Years of studying Earth's military history flashed through his thoughts. "Have you tried guerrilla tactics?" he asked. "Hit-and-run attacks." The alien leaders looked at him in confusion. "Guerrilla? What is this Earth animal strategy?" asked Solar, the reptilian alien. Jake couldn't help but smile. "No, not guerrilla. Guerrilla. It's a way of fighting against a stronger enemy. You don't face them head-on. Instead, you strike quickly and then disappear." The concept was new to many of the aliens. Their civilizations had evolved past the need for war long ago. But now, faced with the Ravagers, they listened intently as Jake explained basic military tactics. As days passed, more reports of Ravager attacks came in. The Confederation's forces fought bravely, but they were outmatched. Desperate calls for help flooded in from across the galaxy. Jake found himself working around the clock, advising alien commanders and helping to coordinate defenses. He was surprised to find that his human way of thinking often led to unexpected solutions. One day, as Jake was explaining the concept of camouflage to a group of luminescent aliens, an urgent message came through. "The Ravagers have breached our defenses in the Orion Arm," a panicked voice announced. "They're heading for the Xynthra homeworld." The room erupted in chaos. The Xynthra were one of the oldest and most respected races in the Confederation. Their fall would be a devastating blow. Jake's mind raced. He remembered something from Earth's history. "Wait," he shouted, silencing the room. "I have an idea." He quickly explained his plan. It was risky, unconventional by Confederation standards. But desperate times called for desperate measures. Hours later, Jake stood on the bridge of a Confederation ship, watching as his plan unfolded. A small fleet of ships faced the incoming Ravager armada. But these weren't ordinary ships. "Are you sure this will work, human?" asked Captain Zyra, a tentacled alien who commanded the fleet. Jake nodded, hoping he looked more confident than he felt. "In our history, we called this a Trojan horse. Trust me." As the Ravager ships approached, the Confederation fleet didn't run. Instead, they sent out a distress signal, pretending to be damaged and helpless. The Ravagers, overconfident in their superiority, moved in to finish off their prey. That's when Jake gave the signal. The damaged Confederation ships suddenly came to life. Hidden weapons emerged from secret compartments. Before the Ravagers could react, they found themselves under attack from the very ships they thought were easy targets. The battle was fierce, but short. Caught off guard, the Ravager fleet crumbled under the surprise assault. As cheers erupted across the Confederation channels, Jake let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. Back at Confederation headquarters, Jake was met with a hero's welcome. Aliens of all species patted him on the back, their previous disdain for humans completely forgotten. Zorth approached Jake, his 3 eyes shining with gratitude. "You've given us hope, Ambassador Thompson," he said solemnly. "Perhaps we were wrong about humans. Your species may be cautious, but you are far from cowards." Jake nodded, feeling a mix of pride and determination. "We're just getting started," he said. "The Ravagers won't know what hit them." As he looked around at the diverse group of aliens, all united in their fight against a common enemy, Jake realized something important. Humanity's place in the galaxy had changed forever. Their journey from cowards to leaders had begun, and there was no turning back. The success of the Trojan horse strategy against the Ravagers had given the Galactic Confederation a much-needed boost of confidence. But Jake Thompson knew that one victory wasn't enough. The real work was just beginning. "We need to prepare for a long war," Jake explained to the Confederation Council. The alien leaders listened intently, their various appendages and sensory organs focused on the human ambassador. "But we defeated them," argued Glix, a gelatinous being from a water world. "Surely they will leave us alone now." Jake shook his head. "In human history, we've learned that enemies like the Ravagers don't give up easily. We need to be ready for anything." Over the next few weeks, Jake worked tirelessly to help the Confederation prepare. He taught them about building defenses, setting up early warning systems, and even the basics of propaganda to keep morale high. One day, as Jake was demonstrating how to set up a minefield in space, using harmless holographic projections, of course, an alarm blared through the Confederation headquarters. "Emergency! Emergency!" The voice of Zorth, the Confederation leader, echoed through the halls. "All council members report to the main chamber immediately." Jake rushed to the chamber, his heart pounding. When he arrived, he found the alien leaders in a state of panic. Zorth's 3 eyes were wide with fear as he announced, "The Ravagers have developed a new weapon. They've used it to destroy an entire star system." Gasps and cries of horror filled the room. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. This was worse than anything they had faced before. "How?" Jake asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "What kind of weapon could do that?" Zorth activated a holographic display. It showed a massive ship, unlike anything they had seen before. "Our spies report that it's called the Star Eater. It can absorb the energy of a star, destroying everything in the system." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. With this weapon, the Ravagers could wipe out entire civilizations in one fell swoop. Jake's mind raced. They needed a plan, and fast. Suddenly, an idea struck him. It was risky, perhaps even crazy, but it might be their only chance. "I have a plan," Jake announced. All eyes turned to him. "But I'll need volunteers. It's going to be dangerous." To Jake's surprise, aliens from every species in the room stepped forward. The same beings who once looked down on humans as cowards were now ready to risk their lives based on a human's plan. Over the next few days, Jake worked with the volunteers to prepare. They modified a fleet of small, fast ships with special shielding. The plan was simple, but daring. They would attack the Star Eater directly. As the fleet prepared to leave, Jake stood before the volunteers. "I know you're scared," he said. "Humans get scared too. But being brave doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means you act even when you are afraid." The aliens nodded, drawing strength from his words. Jake had come to realize that while these advanced species had evolved past many of humanity's flaws, they had also lost some of their strengths. The ability to face fear, to innovate under pressure. These were gifts humanity could offer to the galaxy. The battle against the Star Eater was fierce. Jake coordinated the attack from a command ship, watching as the small Confederation fleet darted around the massive Ravager weapon. They were looking for a weak spot, any vulnerability they could exploit. "There," Jake shouted, pointing at a small opening in the Star Eater's defenses. "All ships, focus your fire on that point." The Confederation ships concentrated their attack. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then suddenly, a series of explosions rippled across the surface of the Star Eater. The massive ship began to break apart, its own stored energy turning against it. The Confederation fleet quickly retreated as the Star Eater exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Cheers erupted across the Confederation channels. They had done it. The seemingly invincible weapon had been destroyed. As the fleet returned home to a hero's welcome, Jake felt a mixture of relief and determination. They had won a major victory, but the war was far from over. The Ravagers would be back, possibly with new and deadlier weapons. But looking at the united faces of the Confederation, Jake knew they would be ready. Humanity had shown the galaxy a new way forward, a path of bravery, innovation, and unwavering determination. The once cowardly humans had become the galaxy's greatest hope. As celebrations broke out across Confederation space, Jake allowed himself a small smile. The journey ahead would be hard, but for the first time since the Ravagers appeared, he felt real hope for the future. The destruction of the Star Eater had bought the Galactic Confederation some much-needed time. But Jake Thompson knew better than to let his guard down. As he stood before the Confederation Council, he could see a mix of hope and worry on the faces of the alien leaders. "We've won a great victory," Jake began, his voice echoing through the Grand Chamber. "But the Ravagers won't give up. We need to push our advantage." Zorth, the Confederation leader, nodded his three-eyed head. "What do you suggest, Ambassador Thompson?" Jake took a deep breath. "We need to take the fight to them. It's time for us to go on the offensive." A murmur ran through the council. The idea of actively seeking out the Ravagers was frightening to many. For centuries, the Confederation had been peaceful. The concept of launching an attack was foreign to them. But that's not our way," stuttered Glix, the gelatinous being. "We are peaceful explorers, not warriors." Jake understood their hesitation, but he also knew that sometimes, to preserve peace, you had to be willing to fight for it. "I know it's scary," he said gently, "but if we don't stop the Ravagers now, they'll keep coming back stronger." As the council debated, an alarm suddenly blared through the chamber. A holographic screen flickered to life, showing a distress signal from a distant Confederation outpost. "This is Colony Zeta 9, a panicked voice crackled through the speakers. "We're under attack. The Ravagers have some kind of new weapon. It's controlling our minds." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the council in stunned silence. Jake's mind raced. Mind control. This was a whole new level of threat. "We need to act now," Jake said firmly. "Every moment we wait, more people fall under the Ravagers' control." This time, there was no debate. The council quickly agreed to Jake's plan for a counteroffensive. But as they prepared their forces, Jake knew they needed something more. They needed a way to protect their minds. That's when he remembered something from Earth's history. Tinfoil hats, he muttered to himself, drawing confused looks from nearby aliens. "What are these tinfoil hats?" asked Solar, the reptilian alien, his forked tongue flicking out curiously. Jake chuckled. "It's an old joke from Earth. People used to think wearing hats made of metal foil would protect them from mind control." Then his eyes widened as an idea struck him. But wait, maybe we're onto something here. Over the next few days, Jake worked tirelessly with the Confederation's top scientists. They combined Earth's simple idea with advanced alien technology, creating helmets that could shield the wearer's mind from outside influence. As the Confederation fleet prepared to launch their counterattack, Jake stood before them, holding up one of the new helmets. "With these, we can fight the Ravagers on equal ground," he announced. "They can't control what they can't reach." The fleet set off, determination visible even on the most alien of faces. As they approached Zeta 9, they could see the Ravager ships surrounding the colony. But this time, they were ready. The battle was fierce. Ravager mind control beams lashed out, but bounced harmlessly off the Confederation's new helmets. Jake coordinated the attack from the flagship, using strategies inspired by Earth's naval battles. "Concentrate fire on their command ship," Jake ordered. "If we can take out their leader, the rest will fall into disarray." The Confederation ships moved with new confidence, their tactics unpredictable to the Ravagers who were used to facing easily controlled foes. Slowly but surely, they pushed the enemy back. In a final decisive move, the Confederation fleet surrounded the Ravager command ship. With their minds protected and their spirits high, they launched an all-out assault. The Ravager ship erupted in a ball of fire, and the remaining enemy vessels quickly retreated. As cheers erupted across the Confederation channels, Jake allowed himself a moment of relief. They had faced the Ravager's new weapon and emerged victorious. More importantly, they had proven that the Confederation could take the fight to the enemy and win. Back at headquarters, Jake was met with a hero's welcome. Aliens of all species crowded around, eager to shake his hand or touch him with whatever appendage they had. Zorth approached, his three eyes shining with gratitude and newfound respect. "You've shown us the way, Jake," he said solemnly. "We asked for your help because we thought humans were cautious. But you've proven that true courage isn't the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it." Jake nodded, feeling a mix of pride and determination. The Ravagers were still out there, no doubt planning their next move. But now, the Galactic Confederation was united, confident, and ready to face whatever came next. As he looked out at the sea of alien faces, all wearing their mind shield helmets, Jake couldn't help but smile. Who would have thought that humanity's reputation for being cowardly would lead to this? They had become the galaxy's defenders, turning caution into courage, fear into strength. The battle for the galaxy was far from over, but for the first time, Jake truly believed they could win. The victory over the Ravager's mind control weapon had given the Galactic Confederation a much-needed morale boost. But Jake Thompson knew that the war was far from over. As he stood in the Confederation's war room, studying holographic maps of the galaxy, he couldn't shake the feeling that the Ravagers were planning something big. "They're too quiet," Jake muttered, more to himself than to the alien leaders around him. "It's been weeks since their last attack." Zorth floated over, his three eyes blinking in concern. "Perhaps they have given up," the Confederation leader suggested hopefully. Jake shook his head. In human history, when an enemy goes quiet, it usually means they're preparing for something worse. As if on cue, alarms began blaring throughout the headquarters. Red lights flashed, and alien voices shouted in various languages. Jake's heart raced as he turned to the main view screen. What he saw made his blood run cold. A massive Ravager fleet, larger than anything they had seen before, was emerging from a previously unknown wormhole on the edge of Confederation space. "By the cosmic eggs," Sithler hissed, his reptilian scales standing on end. "There must be thousands of ships." Jake's mind raced. They had faced tough odds before, but this seemed impossible. The Confederation fleet, spread thin across the galaxy, couldn't hope to match these numbers. But then, Jake remembered something from Earth's history, a battle where a small force had faced an overwhelming enemy. And won. "I have an idea," Jake said, his voice cutting through the panic in the room. "But it's going to require every ship we have, and some we don't." Over the next few hours, Jake outlined his plan. It was daring, perhaps even crazy, but as the details unfolded, the alien leaders began to nod in understanding, and slowly hope. The plan was this: they would gather every ship in the Confederation, from mighty battlecruisers to humble trading vessels. But that wasn't all. Jake also proposed something unprecedented. They would reveal themselves to the primitive species in the galaxy, those not yet part of the Confederation, and ask for their help. "But that goes against our prime directive." Vlix wobbled in protest. "We can't interfere with developing civilizations." Jake stood firm. "Sometimes rules need to be broken to save lives. Every ship, every weapon, every willing being could make the difference between victory and extinction." As the Ravager fleet advanced, The call went out across the galaxy. Confederation diplomats revealed themselves to shocked primitive worlds, explaining the dire situation and asking for aid. To everyone's surprise, ship after ship answered the call. Vessels of all shapes and sizes, from worlds that had barely achieved spaceflight to long-hidden advanced civilizations, joined the Confederation fleet. Jake stood on the bridge of the flagship, looking out at the massive, diverse armada they had assembled. It was a sight unlike any in galactic history, a true united front of all sentient life. As the Ravager fleet approached, Jake gave his final orders. The plan was complex, involving decoys, hit-and-run attacks, and a final, decisive strike. It drew inspiration from countless human battles, from ancient naval engagements to modern space warfare simulations. Remember, Jake's voice echoed across the communication channels to every ship in their makeshift fleet. We're not just fighting for the Confederation. We're fighting for every living being in this galaxy. For our right to exist, to grow, to reach for the stars. Today, we are all one people. Today, we make our stand. A cheer went up across the channels, a cacophony of voices in 1,000 languages, all united in purpose. The battle that followed would be remembered for millennia to come. The Ravager fleet, despite its size, found itself outmaneuvered at every turn. Primitive ships darted between the behemoths, causing confusion. Confederation vessels struck from unexpected angles. And at the heart of it all was Jake, coordinating the most complex military operation the galaxy had ever seen. Hours passed, feeling like days. Ships fell on both sides, brave souls of all species giving their lives for the cause. But slowly, surely, the tide began to turn. In a final, desperate gambit, Jake ordered the flagship to strike at the heart of the Ravager fleet. It was a suicide mission, and he knew it. But as the ship plunged into the fray, something unexpected happened. Every other ship in the fleet, from the mightiest Confederation cruiser to the smallest primitive vessel, followed. It was as if the entire galaxy had decided, as one, that this was the moment to end the Ravager threat once and for all. The Ravager fleet, caught off guard by this final unified assault, began to crumble. Their ships, designed for terror and destruction, couldn't withstand the combined will of a galaxy united in defense of life itself. As the last Ravager ship fell, a silence descended across the battlefield. Then, slowly, cheers began to rise. The galaxy had faced its greatest threat and emerged victorious. Jake stood on the bridge, battered but alive, looking out at the celebrating fleet. In that moment, he realized that humanity's greatest contribution to the galaxy hadn't been their battle tactics or their technology. It had been their ability to unite, to inspire, to lead even in the darkest of times. The once cowardly humans had shown the galaxy the true meaning of courage, and in doing so, they had changed the course of cosmic history forever. The galaxy was still reeling from the aftermath of the Great Battle. The Ravager threat had been defeated, but at a tremendous cost. Countless lives had been lost, planets damaged, and the very fabric of galactic society had been forever changed. Jake Thompson stood before the Galactic Confederation Council, his face showing the weariness of the long war. But in his eyes burned a fierce determination. The human ambassador knew that their work was far from over. "We've won the war," Jake began, his voice echoing through the Grand Chamber. "But now we face an even greater challenge: winning the peace." The alien leaders murmured among themselves. Zorth, the Confederation leader, spoke up. "What do you mean, Ambassador Thompson? The Ravagers are gone. Isn't peace already here?" Jake shook his head. "Peace isn't just the absence of war. It's about building a better future for everyone. And right now, our galaxy is in chaos." He activated a holographic display, showing the devastation across countless worlds. Refugee crisis, destroyed infrastructure, and political upheaval plagued every corner of the galaxy. "We need to help rebuild," Jake continued, "not just for Confederation members, but for every world that stood with us against the Ravagers. including the primitive species we revealed ourselves to. This statement caused an uproar among the council. Many argued that they should return to their policy of non-interference. Others feared the primitive species might now pose a threat. Jake listened patiently, then raised his hand for silence. I understand your concerns, but we can't go back to the way things were. We asked these worlds for help in our darkest hour. We owe them our support now. He outlined a bold plan, a galactic reconstruction initiative. It would involve sharing technology, providing aid, and helping every world rebuild. But more than that, it would mean bringing these new species into the galactic community as equals. It's risky, Jake admitted, but think of the potential. New ideas, new perspectives, new allies. We have a chance to create a truly united galaxy. The debate raged for days. Jake found himself not just arguing for humanity's place in the galaxy, but for a completely new vision of what the galaxy could be. It was exhausting, frustrating work. But slowly, world by world, he began to win support. Finally, after what felt like endless negotiations, the council reached a decision. They would move forward with Jake's plan, with some modifications. The galaxy would unite not just in war, but in peace. As the news spread, Jake found himself traveling from world to world, overseeing reconstruction efforts and mediating disputes. He visited advanced Confederation worlds and primitive planets alike, always with the same message: we're all in this together. On a small, newly spacefaring world, Jake stood before a crowd of awestruck aliens. Their cities lay in ruins from the Ravager attacks, but their spirit remained unbroken. You stood with us when it mattered most, Jake told them, his words translated into their clicking language. Now we stand with you. We'll help you rebuild, and together we'll reach for the stars. The crowd cheered, their multiple limbs waving in excitement. As Jake looked out at their hopeful faces, he felt a profound sense of responsibility. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was at the heart of that change. Months passed, and slowly the galaxy began to heal. New trade routes opened up, cultural exchanges flourished, and scientific cooperation led to breakthroughs that benefited all species. The primitive worlds, far from being a burden, brought fresh energy and ideas to the galactic community. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were setbacks, conflicts, and moments when it seemed like everything might fall apart. Jake found himself working tirelessly, mediating disputes between species that had been enemies for millennia, and trying to balance the needs of countless different worlds. One day, as Jake sat in his office, exhausted from another round of negotiations, Zorth paid him a visit. "You look tired, my friend," the Confederation leader said, his three eyes blinking sympathetically. Jake managed a weak smile. "Winning the peace is harder than winning the war," he admitted. Zorth nodded. "Indeed. But look at what you've accomplished." He activated a holographic display, showing the galaxy. Points of light represented rebuilt worlds, new alliances, and thriving communities. "You've transformed us all, Jake. You've shown us what it truly means to be brave." Jake looked at the display, feeling a mix of pride and humility. Humanity, once seen as the cowards of the galaxy, had led the charge not just in war, but in building a lasting peace. They had faced their fears, challenged the status quo, and emerged stronger for it. As he stood there, looking at the shimmering map of a united galaxy, Jake realized that this was just the beginning. The stars no longer represented distant, unreachable points of light. They were beacons of hope, promises of new adventures and challenges to come. The galaxy had changed, and humanity had changed with it. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: it would be faced together, with courage, compassion, and an unbreakable spirit. 10 years had passed since the end of the Ravager War. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have imagined. Jake Thompson, once a simple ambassador, now stood as one of the most respected figures in the universe. On this day, representatives from every corner of the galaxy had gathered for a momentous occasion. The inauguration of the new Galactic Alliance headquarters, this massive space station, floating at the heart of the galaxy, symbolized the unity and cooperation that had blossomed in the post-war years. Jake walked through the grand halls, marveling at the diversity around him. Species that had once been mortal enemies now chatted amicably. Primitive races that had barely achieved spaceflight a decade ago now shared advanced technologies with ancient civilizations. It was a sight that filled him with pride and hope. As he approached the main chamber, Jake's mind drifted back to the long, difficult journey that had led to this moment. The challenges hadn't ended with the defeat of the Ravagers. There had been countless obstacles, resource disputes, cultural clashes, the temptation for advanced races to exploit the newer members of the galactic community. But at every turn, humanity had been there to guide the way. Their unique blend of caution and courage, their ability to innovate and adapt, had proven invaluable. The very traits that had once labeled them as cowards had become the foundation of a new galactic order. Jake entered the chamber to a round of applause. Alien faces of all shapes and sizes turned to him, their eyes, or equivalent sensory organs, shining with respect and admiration. At the center of the room stood Zorth, the longtime Confederation leader who had become one of Jake's closest friends. "Welcome, Jake," Zorth said, his three eyes blinking warmly. "Are you ready to make history once again?" Jake nodded, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Today, he would present the Galactic Constitution, a document that would formalize the alliance between all sentient species. It had taken years of negotiation, compromise, and hard work to reach this point. As Jake stepped up to the podium, he looked out at the assembled delegates. He saw faces he recognized from countless meetings and negotiations, but he also saw new faces, young aliens who had grown up in this era of unity and cooperation. "Friends, allies, fellow sentients," Jake began, his voice carrying across the chamber. "A decade ago, we faced extinction. The Ravagers threatened not just our lives, but our very right to exist in this universe." He paused, letting the memory sink in. Many in the room had fought in that terrible war. "But we stood together," Jake continued. "Not just the Confederation, but every race, every world that called this galaxy home. We proved that our diversity, far from being a weakness, was our greatest strength." Jake then began to outline the key points of the Galactic Constitution. It guaranteed rights for all sentient beings, established protocols for peaceful conflict resolution, and created frameworks for shared scientific and cultural exchanges. But more than that, it enshrined the principles that had guided them through the dark times: courage, compassion, and unity. As he spoke, Jake could see the emotion on the faces of the delegates. For many, this moment represented the culmination of lifelong dreams. For others, it was a new beginning, full of possibilities they had never imagined. "This Constitution," Jake said, his voice filled with passion, "is not just a set of rules. It's a promise that we will face the future together, that we will lift each other up, that we will explore the wonders of the universe as one united galactic family." The chamber erupted in cheers and applause. Species that lacked hands found other ways to show their approval, flashing bioluminescent patterns, emitting joyful pheromones, or vibrating in harmony. As the applause died down, Zorth stepped forward. "Thank you, Jake," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You and your species have led us to this moment. You've shown us that true courage isn't about being fearless, but about facing our fears and overcoming them together." Jake felt a lump in his throat. He thought back to those early days when humans were seen as the cowards of the galaxy. How far they had come. The ceremony concluded with the signing of the Constitution. One by one, representatives from every world put their mark on the document. As Jake watched, he felt a profound sense of accomplishment and hope. Later, as the celebration was in full swing, Jake stood by a large window, looking out at the stars. Zorth floated up beside him. "What are you thinking, my friend?" the alien leader asked. Jake smiled. "I'm thinking about the future," he said. "About all the adventures and challenges that await us out there." Zorth nodded. "Whatever comes, we'll face it together. Thanks to you, we're no longer a galaxy of individual races. We're a family." As Jake looked out at the vast expanse of space, he felt a sense of excitement. The story of humanity and the galaxy was just beginning. They had overcome their reputation as cowards, led the charge against a terrible enemy, and built a lasting peace. But the greatest adventures, Jake knew, were still to come, and humanity would be at the forefront, leading the way with courage, compassion, and an unquenchable spirit of exploration. The stars beckoned, and the united galaxy was ready to answer the call.